there folks, and welcome back to Fishing with Den. Well, if you've been watching the channel regularly, you would have seen me last week testing a load of supermarket products to see if they would work as a goo or a glug for adding to various different things like hook baits or whatever. I tested a few and most of them seem to work okay, but in the end I've settled at the moment on just using some molasses because that seems to do what I want it to do. So, what do I want it to do? Well, you would have also heard me talking about a project I'd got in mind. And for that project, obviously, I needed these flavours. Now, you can't buy the various goos and stuff like you can in the UK down here in Australia. We tend to be sort of so far away that even trying to buy it online is really expensive. And not only that, I'm not sure it would get through the biohazard filters, if you like, in the customs. But anyway, I've settled on molasses to do this job. But what is the job? Well, you would have seen me putting some of this molasses onto one of these bits of foam, putting it in here, and you can then see how it all sort of comes out and permeates the water with both a smell and a flavour, just like this. So having got to that point, we now get to the point of this one. And this is the new project called a Flavour Feeder. GoPro, start recording. I'll show you down here because it's actually probably easier. This is the Flavour Feeder and it's got that same piece of foam inside. And hopefully you're now getting the point. What we're going to do is we're going to put some of this molasses goo into this. And the idea is that because it's winter here, and specifically that's what I'm using this for, not necessarily for summer, although I might give that a try, but specifically for winter, when, as we all know, fish are cold-blooded, temperatures go down, so they don't move so much and they eat far less. So if you put too much bait in, you either scare them off with the splash, or you just feed them off and then that's the end of your day. So, rather than having to feed anything at all, I'm looking at using one of these things. And I have actually tried it for a few minutes, and I'm not going to go into the details, but next week's video will be me giving it a proper go. So how does this all work then? Well, obviously, it's just a normal feeder, and it started off, where is it? There we are. Started off just like any other sort of feeder. It's square, and there's a reason it's square, is because it's easier to cut foam square. So this is obviously a prototype, it's totally experimental, but this is where we're going at the moment. Now, I started off and I had the standard straight through one, which you can see there. But it occurred to me that if I did that, if I put this in, potentially, I just put that a bit better than that then, that could potentially blow out or be pulled out or whatever, and possibly, if it's still got flavour in it, a fish could take it, and that's just not what we want, is it? Don't want to be damaging the fish. So, the next idea was to enclose the end so that it literally can't come out through that end. In fact, in the end, what I did do, I used some roofing sealant to glue it into the bottom there, and then I've glued it in as well, just in case it did try and come out that way. But finally, what I ended up with was another idea, which is kind of going away a little bit from the idea of not feeding anything at all, just the flavour. And that is, it's the same idea where you put the foam in, but in the bottom there's just a little recess in here, a recess in there. So if I wanted to, I could probably get 2 bits of sweet corn, maybe a couple of bits of pellets, maybe a little bit of ground bait, but it's a minute amount and it all gets fed around it. But the idea is that the flavour from this permeates the water around it, brings the fish in, and then obviously to start off with I won't be putting anything in there. We'll see how that goes, and then if that doesn't work, we'll put a bit of bait in and we'll see how we go from there. It's all experimental, like I keep saying, so bear with me on this one. These things will probably change, but for the moment, that's what they are. So here we are then, I've set this one up. I've got some lead in the back. This one's 24 grams, but the other ones are 18 grams, and I'll probably use those. I'll go down to Den's Pond and give it a go, see what happens. But there it is. Now, what I was going to do was just take some of the molasses and literally pour it on the top there like that. But again, as we saw last week, it's not that visible. Well, it is visible, but for the purposes of the camera, what I'm going to do this week is I'm going to pour some into this container, like that. And then I'm just going to get some of this red food dye just to colour it. Now, at this point in time, oops, I am not intending to use the red food dye on it, but if it has an effect, well, great, I might actually end up using it. Let's get a fork out. We'll just stir this around a minute, give it a second. I hope I put enough in there. I literally only put a drop or two in it. Right, just get rid of this fork. Don't want wifey complaining, do we? Right, so here's our feeder. Obviously there's no hook on this. If I pour some into that, in fact, sorry, just to make sure you can see, it does obviously sink. The sponge doesn't create too much buoyancy. Okay, so I'll just squeeze that water out of there now. And you can see there's a little recess in the top once I've done that. That's just because I've squeezed it down. Now, hopefully this will come out, and I haven't actually tried it this way yet. Let's push it down a bit then. Just get some on there. And don't want to put too much on just yet. Right, so you probably can't see it on that one, but here we go, look, that's on the top there. And I've made these little sort of plungy stick things because it stays on the top. So all I'm going to do is just push down, 2 or 3 pushes, and it goes in and stays in. What you might want to do is, as I've done here, this is just a little tub of water, because you don't want to be leaving it on your side tray, because obviously it'll make things sticky. But not only that, if you're over here, you're going to get flies, wasps, all sorts of creepy crawlies trying to eat it, and ants is another one. So we'll put this in as if it's been put on the bottom, like that, and it should start to break up fairly quickly. Generally it takes a few seconds just to start to come out, but already you can see that that's starting to create a bit of a stain on the bottom, and hopefully it's permeating the water with this smell as well. Okay, we're going to leave that in for a minute or two, and I have done a couple of tests on this, and if I do it right, it generally takes 2 to 3 minutes for that to come out altogether. So that's basically the plan. As I've said, if I go down to the pond and I try this for say an hour, maybe 2 hours, and I just don't get any bites, well, it's all a failure, and we can go back to square one again. As I say, for winter, this is purely for winter. Obviously we're in winter now, like I've said. This, in my view, might work, because I feed very little in the winter anyway. But as we see from that, that's actually starting to go down. I'm hoping that the camera's picking it up quite nicely. Oops, sorry. Let's just get that back to rights. At this point in time, there's no undertow or anything, and there's no fish flapping around it. So what I'll do is I'll just sort of do this a little bit, and you can see that even with just those couple of paddles of a tail, you can see that we've got certainly a colour in the water. We'll also have a flavour and a smell. And in fact, I'm hoping this one's picking up as well, because we're creating a bit of a cloud there. So that's the plan. What we've got to do now is to go down and prove it and see if it works. Let me know if you think this is a brilliant idea or just a pile of rubbish. I mean, it could be, you know, just rubbish, but hey, if you don't try it, you're never going to know, are you? Anyway, if you wanted to make your own sort of flavour feeder for whatever reason, just be careful, like I said before. If you have a normal open-end feeder, putting that in could mean it comes out. So if you're going to do this, my suggestion would be to use a block end feeder, put a piece of foam in, and that's it. But remember, I've made these really small. Okay, not small enough so the fish is going to pick them up in their mouths, hopefully, but you know, it is pretty small, because I don't need huge amounts of flavour going out into the water, I don't think. Having said that, I have actually produced this one, which is a larger version of it, as you can see here. Oops, like that. Right, so I don't know. In the summer, would I be gaining an advantage by putting ground bait or pellets in the bottom of here and then putting the sponge in the top? Again, that'll be something we do in the summer when summer finally comes along. But in terms of making it, it's actually really, really simple. If any of you want the STL file for doing this on a 3D printer, it's on Thingiverse. I'll put a link down in the description box down below so you can go and you can print it for yourselves. But as I say, those of you that don't have 3D printers, just get a block end feeder and put some foam in that, and hopefully that'll do the job. That is rather large, unfortunately, unless you can get really small ones. But that's the plan. The only thing now is to get my backside down to Den's Pond and give this a go. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the explanation of where we're going here. If you like the video, of course, as always, click the button. If you want to subscribe, that's great. And if you feel like you want to contribute, that's fantastic too. But until the next time when we're down at Den's Pond, bye for now.